In Saudi Arabia, apostasy is the legal term for leaving or rejecting the religion of Islam. Under the country's system of Islamic law, this act is treated as one of the most serious crimes. The punishment for apostasy can include a prison sentence or even the death penalty, usually by beheading. The law doesn't only apply to people who openly convert to another religion. Even making a statement that questions a basic part of Islam, such as the authority of the Prophet Muhammad or the truth of the Quran, can be considered apostasy. Posting a comment online or repeating a controversial opinion in public or private may be enough to trigger an investigation. Saudi Arabia does not use a clear, written set of criminal laws. Instead, judges rely on traditional Islamic texts and past religious rulings to make decisions. This gives the courts a lot of freedom to decide how to handle each case. Two people accused of the same thing might receive very different outcomes. One might be given time to take back their words, while another could face a death sentence. In most cases, the person accused of apostasy is arrested and pressured to repent, meaning they are asked to admit guilt and return to the faith. Sometimes, this can lead to a reduced punishment, but it is not guaranteed. Trials often take place in secret, and it is common for the accused to have limited access to legal help. Even though actual executions are rare, the strict rules around religious belief create a climate of fear. Speaking freely about religion or belief is risky, and many people avoid the topic completely. Apostasy in Saudi Arabia is not only a religious issue, it is seen as a threat to the country's entire system of authority. In North Korea, one of the most extreme laws is the punishment of an entire family for the actions of a single person. This policy is based on the idea of guilt by association. If someone commits a political crime, their children, parents, and sometimes even grandchildren can also be arrested and sent to prison camps, whether or not they were involved. This law has existed since the 1970s, during the rule of Kim Il-sung. The idea was that political disloyalty runs in a family, and to stop future rebellion, the entire family line must be erased. It is often called the 3-generation rule because punishment can extend to 3 generations of relatives. People sent to these camps are often given no trial and no official reason for their arrest. They simply disappear. Families are taken in the middle of the night with no warning and are forced into labor camps. In these camps, prisoners face extremely harsh conditions, including hard labor, starvation, disease, and physical abuse. Even small actions can be considered political crimes. For example, speaking critically about the government, listening to foreign radio, or failing to show proper respect for the country's leaders may be enough to trigger arrest. This policy is designed to prevent rebellion by creating fear. It teaches people that disobedience does not just affect them, it puts their entire family at risk. As a result, people are careful not only about their actions, but also about what their family members say or do. In Iran, all women and girls above the age of puberty are legally required to wear the hijab in public. This rule became law after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when Iran changed from a monarchy to a religious government. The law applies to both Iranian citizens and foreign visitors. Women must also dress modestly by wearing loose-fitting clothing that covers the arms and legs. Clothing that is considered too tight or colorful can lead to punishment. These rules are part of Iran's Islamic Penal Code and are enforced by both police and a special unit known as the Morality Police. Women who are seen in public without proper covering can face fines, arrest, lashings, or even prison time. In some cases, the government has used surveillance cameras and facial recognition technology to track women who do not follow the dress code. Women can also be reported by private citizens, and even a photo on social media can lead to legal trouble. In recent years, many women have protested this law by removing their headscarves in public or posting videos online. Some of these women have been arrested and charged with crimes such as promoting immorality or acting against national security. Despite the protests over the years, the law still remains in place. The Iranian government views it as a core part of the country's Islamic identity and continues to enforce it strictly. China's social credit system is a nationwide program designed to monitor and rate the behavior of citizens, businesses, and even government workers. The system is not a single database, but a combination of policies, regional trials, and government-run blacklist. Its goal is to promote trust, honesty, and lawful behavior in society. The idea behind the system is that people who follow the rules should be rewarded, while those who break laws or behave dishonestly should face consequences. These consequences can include losing access to train or plane tickets, getting denied bank loans, or being blocked from certain jobs. In some cases, personal information and photos of offenders are displayed publicly. Data is collected from many sources, including court records, financial institutions, surveillance footage, and online activity. For example, someone who fails to repay a loan, spreads false information online, or ignores court orders may be added to a blacklist. Some local systems also track smaller behaviors, like playing loud music in public or walking a dog without a leash. In contrast, people with high credit ratings may get faster services, better job opportunities, or public praise. However, the rules can vary from city to city, since the program is still being tested and expanded. Critics say the system gives the government too much control over people's lives and can be used to silence dissent. There is also concern about the lack of clear rules, as people are often punished without knowing exactly what they did wrong. Supporters argue that it encourages good behavior and helps build a more orderly society. The social credit system remains one of the most debated programs in China, with plans for broader national coordination continuing to develop. Brunei, a small Southeast Asian country, began enforcing a strict version of Islamic law, known as Sharia, in 2014. This legal system applies to both Muslims and, in some cases, non-Muslims living in the country. It includes harsh punishments for certain offenses, including theft, adultery, drinking alcohol, and same-sex relationships. One of the most controversial parts of Brunei's Sharia penal code is the use of corporal and capital punishment. For example, adultery and same-sex sexual acts can legally be punished by stoning to death, though in practice, such sentences have not yet been carried out. Theft may be punished by amputation, and public drinking can result in whipping. The law also includes moral rules. Muslims who miss Friday prayers, fast improperly during Ramadan, or are found engaging in indecent behavior can face fines or jail time. The government also restricts religious freedom by limiting the public practice of non-Islamic religions and banning religious symbols like crosses or Bibles from being displayed openly. Although the law technically applies only to Muslims in many cases, some parts affect non-Muslims as well. For example, businesses cannot sell alcohol to anyone, and celebrations like Christmas must be done privately and without public display. Brunei's leadership defends the law as a reflection of the country's Islamic values and national identity. However, the global response has been strong. Human rights groups, foreign governments, and international celebrities criticized the law when it was introduced. Brunei is one of the only countries in the modern world to apply such a wide-ranging Sharia legal code at the national level, making it a rare and highly controversial system. Since the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan in August 2021, one of their most controversial actions has been banning girls and women from attending school and university. This ban affects nearly all levels of education beyond the 6th grade and has sparked global criticism. Under the Taliban's rules, girls are not allowed to attend secondary schools, which include grades 7 to 12. In December 2022, the ban was extended to universities, cutting off higher education for women entirely. The government claims the decision is temporary and based on concerns about Islamic dress codes and classroom separation between male and female students. However, no clear plan or timeline has been given for lifting the restrictions. This policy has reversed 2 decades of progress in female education. Before the Taliban's return, millions of Afghan girls were enrolled in schools, and thousands of women had begun studying in university. Many of them were preparing for careers in medicine, law, education, and science. In place of formal education, the Taliban has encouraged home-based religious instruction for girls, but these options are limited and not recognized by universities or employers. Women who try to protest or continue their education in secret risk arrest and harassment. Some private schools and underground learning centers still operate quietly, but they do so at great personal risk. International organizations and human rights groups have condemned the ban, calling it a violation of basic rights. Despite global pressure, the Taliban has defended its stance, saying it aligns with their interpretation of Islamic values. Mauritania is one of the few countries in the world where slavery still exists in practice, despite being officially outlawed. Although slavery was legally abolished in 1981 and criminalized in 2007, reports show that thousands of people, especially from the Heritan ethnic group, still live in conditions of slavery today. In this system, individuals are born into slavery and inherited as property. Most of them perform unpaid labor, including domestic work, herding animals, and farming. They have little or no access to education, healthcare, or legal rights. Many are denied basic freedoms, such as the right to choose where to live or whom to marry. The issue is deeply tied to Mauritania's social structure. The Heritan people, who are often darker skinned, have historically been enslaved by the lighter-skinned Arab Berber elites. Even after legal abolition, many former slaveholders continue to hold power in rural areas where the government has limited oversight. As a result, traditional relationships of control and obedience still persist. While the government has introduced anti-slavery laws and created special courts to handle such cases, enforcement is weak. Very few cases make it to trial, and convictions are rare. Victims often fear retaliation if they report their masters, and many are unaware of their rights under the law. Mauritania continues to face criticism for not doing enough to end slavery. Although the law has changed on paper, changing the culture, mindset, and social structures behind the system has proven to be far more difficult. Singapore has some of the strictest drug laws in the world. Under the Misuse of Drugs Act, certain drug offenses carry a mandatory death sentence. This includes being caught with more than specific amounts of drugs like heroin, cocaine, or methamphetamine, even if there is no proof of intent to sell. For example, possession of more than 15 grams of heroin or 500 grams of cannabis can result in an automatic death penalty. The law assumes that anyone holding more than these limits is involved in drug trafficking, unless they can prove otherwise. This puts a heavy burden on the accused, and the outcome often depends on the interpretation of the courts. Singapore uses these strict laws as a way to deter drug crime. The government argues that its firm approach has helped the country maintain low drug usage rates and a high level of public safety. Executions are carried out by hanging and are usually conducted in private. Critics say the law is too harsh and does not allow enough room for individual circumstances. There have been cases where people caught with drugs claim they were forced or tricked into carrying them, but still received the death penalty. Despite the criticism, Singapore has defended its policy, saying it is necessary to protect its citizens and to keep the country safe. In 2023, Uganda passed one of the harshest anti-LGBTQ+ laws in the world. This law, known as the Anti-Homosexuality Act, includes the death penalty for what the government calls aggravated homosexuality. This refers to cases where one person is HIV positive, is a repeat offender, or where the alleged acts involve minors or vulnerable people. The law also imposes life imprisonment for people convicted of engaging in same-sex sexual activity, even if it is consensual. Promoting or supporting LGBTQ+ rights in any form, such as holding events, funding programs, or creating content, is also considered a crime and can result in long prison sentences or heavy fines. Ugandan officials say the law reflects the country's cultural and religious values, which reject homosexuality as immoral. Many leaders argue that the law protects children and strengthens the traditional family structure. However, critics say the law fuels hate, discrimination, and violence against LGBTQ+ people. Since the law was passed, activists have reported an increase in arrests, physical attacks, and evictions of LGBTQ+ individuals across the country. The international response has been strong. Countries like the United States and organizations such as the United Nations and Human Rights Watch have condemned the law. Although Uganda had already criminalized homosexuality under colonial-era laws, this 2023 legislation expanded the penalties and made enforcement more aggressive. In Iran, the legal age for marriage is 13 years for girls and 15 years for boys. However, local judges and parents can approve marriages for even younger children. This creates a situation where some girls are married at ages as low as 9 or 10, with formal permission. Child marriage in Iran can take different forms. In rural regions, it is often done to strengthen family alliances or settle disputes. In religious or tribal communities, girls may be promised in symbolic ceremonies when they are infants and officially married in their teens or earlier. Official statistics from the Iranian government show that more than 31,000 girls under age 15 were married between 2021 and 2022. In 2020 alone, over 5% of registered marriages involved girls under 15. These numbers likely understate the true extent, as many earliest marriages take place informally or with religious officials, rather than civil registration. Social and economic factors contribute significantly. Families in poor, rural areas often view child marriage as a way to reduce financial burden or protect daughters from social stigma. In some cases, parents receive financial incentives from the government to marry off daughters. Yet once married, young girls often lose access to education and face early pregnancy, health risks, and limited legal protections. International organizations, including the United Nations, have criticized Iran's child marriage laws. They argue these laws violate children's rights and expose girls to violence and exploitation. Iran has agreed to consider raising the marriage age, but changes to the law have been slow and face resistance due to cultural and religious beliefs. North Korea is one of the most tightly controlled societies in the world. Citizens have almost no freedom of movement or expression. The government monitors public behavior closely and punishes any form of dissent, criticism, or disobedience with severe penalties. People are not allowed to travel freely within the country, let alone leave it. Movement between cities or provinces requires special government permission. Those caught traveling without authorization may be arrested or sent to labor camps. Trying to escape the country, especially across the border into China, is considered a serious crime. If caught, defectors are often tortured or imprisoned, and their families may also face punishment. The country enforces a quote-unquote law on rejecting reactionary ideology that criminalizes access to foreign culture and language, sometimes with penalties as harsh as death. Even owning a foreign book or using a mobile phone to contact someone outside the country is considered illegal. Internet access is almost non-existent for most North Koreans. Instead, they have a state-controlled intranet, which offers only limited, government-approved content. The government also controls all sources of information. There is no free press, no independent internet, and no foreign media access. Television and radio are state-run and broadcast only government-approved content. Citizens who are caught watching foreign films or listening to outside radio programs can be arrested. In North Korea, the government's complete control over movement and expression is designed to eliminate outside influence, maintain total loyalty, and suppress any threat to its power. In China's Xinjiang region, over 1 million Uyghur Muslims and members of other minority groups have been detained without trial since around 2017. These facilities are officially called vocational education and training centers, but are more widely considered re-education or internment camps. People sent to these camps face arbitrary detention, often for actions like praying, traveling abroad, wearing religious garments, or contacting foreign individuals. They receive no legal due process, and no one knows how long the detention will last. Inside, detainees undergo intensive political indoctrination. They are forced to pledge loyalty to the Communist Party, renounce religious beliefs, study Mandarin, memorize party doctrines, and sing patriotic songs. Surveillance is constant, with cameras, microphones, and strict rules banning religious practices or use of native languages. Reports from former detainees describe harsh conditions. Many were subjected to sleep deprivation, physical beatings, being chained or shackled, and even torture. Some endured forced sterilization or other medical abuses. Human rights groups draw parallels between these centers and concentration camps, describing them as the largest mass detention of a religious minority since World War II. China defends the camps as tools for countering religious extremism, offering language training and job skills. But international bodies, including the United Nations, have condemned the camps, while experts call for greater scrutiny and accountability. In Saudi Arabia's past, every woman was assigned a male guardian, usually a father, husband, brother, or even a son, who had control over many aspects of her life. For years, women needed their guardian's approval to do basic things such as travel abroad, apply for a passport, marry, leave prison, or even access certain types of healthcare. This system made women legally dependent on their male relatives and limited their ability to make personal decisions. In 2019, the Saudi government introduced reforms that loosened some parts of the guardianship laws. Adult women were granted the right to obtain passports and travel without male permission. They were also allowed to register births, deaths, marriages, and divorces, and to serve as guardians of minor children under certain conditions. However, many restrictions remain in practice. While laws have changed on paper, societal expectations and the power of conservative families still limit the daily freedoms of many women. For example, although a woman can now travel without a guardian's permission, some are still stopped by airport officials if their guardian files a complaint. In addition, marriage laws still require the consent of a guardian, and women face legal discrimination in divorce, inheritance, and child custody. Activists who protest the guardianship system have faced arrest and long prison sentences. The guardianship system remains one of the most criticized aspects of Saudi law. International human rights organizations continue to pressure the government to fully eliminate all remaining elements of male control and ensure women have full legal independence. In Nigeria, theft amputations are a legal punishment under Sharia law. This law was implemented around the year 2000, introducing punishments like flogging, stoning, and amputation for certain crimes, including theft and robbery. Under this system, if someone is found guilty of theft and the stolen item meets specific conditions, such as being of a certain value, taken from a secure location, and not done out of necessity, the judge may order amputation of the right hand as punishment. However, this penalty is only applied after strict legal requirements are met, including the testimony of reliable witnesses or a confession. In practice, amputations are rare and highly controversial. Human rights groups have condemned the punishment as cruel and inhumane. They argue that it violates international treaties Nigeria has signed, such as the Convention Against Torture. Despite this, there have been confirmed cases. The use of Sharia law in northern Nigeria has caused legal and cultural tension in the country. While the constitution guarantees freedom of religion and prohibits cruel punishment, state-level Sharia courts operate alongside secular courts. This dual legal system creates confusion about jurisdiction and human rights protections. Although amputations are still part of the Sharia penal code in some states, they are not common nationwide. In most of Nigeria, theft is prosecuted under the secular criminal code, with punishments like imprisonment or fines. In India, the criminal law does not recognize marital non-consensual sex as a crime. According to Section 375 of the Indian Penal Code, sexual intercourse by a man with his wife can never be considered non-consensual, as long as the wife is at least 15 years old. This legal exemption has been in place since colonial times and remains one of the most debated issues in India's legal system. This means that if a husband forces his wife to have sex without her consent, it is not classified as non-consensual under Indian law. The courts consider it a private matter within marriage. Human rights advocates argue that this exemption violates a woman's right to bodily autonomy and, of course, dignity. Several petitions have been filed in Indian courts challenging the constitutionality of this exemption, but the law remains unchanged. Supporters of the exemption, including some lawmakers and conservative groups, argue that criminalizing marital sex could be misused or harm the institution of marriage. Others believe the problem should be addressed through social reforms rather than legal penalties. Many argue that the law reflects outdated social norms that treat marriage as a permanent contract of consent, rather than an evolving relationship based on mutual respect. Critics point out that this legal stance denies married women equal protection under the law. As awareness grows, pressure continues to mount on lawmakers and the judiciary to re-examine the exemption and bring Indian non-consensual laws in line with international human rights standards. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure you leave a like. Comment down below your thoughts on any of the controversial laws I discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see a part 2 or more videos like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.